Now let's take a look at the position of call option seller or call option writer. So we are going to use the same numerical example that we used for call option buyer. So that was a contract in euros, and the contract size was 10,000 euros. Exercise price was $1.30 per euro, which means the buyer of this option has the right to buy euros for $1.30. And the call premium, or the price of this option, it was 10 cents per euro. So this is the price that the call buyer had to pay the seller in order to purchase this right to buy euros. So in the future, when we look at the payoff profile and profit in the future, there are really three possible scenarios in the future. So I'm just copying information here from call option buyer. If you haven't watched that video, make sure go and watch that video. So we said in the future there are really three possible scenarios. In the future, spot rate could be higher than exercise rate. Let's say, for example, spot rate turned out to be $1.50 when the exercise rate is $1.30. In that case, the buyer will obviously exercise this contract and choose to buy euros at the lower rate of $1.30 instead of going directly to the spot market and buying euros at $1.50. But if the spot rate in the future turned out to be the same as exercise price of $1.30 or lower than the exercise price of $1.30, then the buyer will not exercise these contracts, and the contract is said to be either at the money or out of the money. Because in those cases it would be cheaper for the buyer to go directly to the spot market and buy euros at the price that is lower than $1.30. So now let's take a look at the seller. Seller, as you will see, the seller's position is essentially the exact opposite of the buyer's position. So in order to figure out what the profit is going to be for the seller, we are essentially first looking at buyer's profit. So remember that at the price of $1.50, in the future, if the spot rate happens to be $1.50 in the future, the buyer's profit was the difference between the future spot rate of $1.50 and the exercise rate of $1.30, which is 20 cents per euro. So in other words, the buyer could directly exercise this contract and get euros for $1.30, and they could just turn around and sell them on the spot market for $1.50 and make 20 cents per euro. Of course, you have to subtract the cost of the contract itself, which was 10 cents per euro, and this will give you a profit of 10 cents per euro for the buyer of this call option. So if I were to write the generic expression for it, it's the difference between future spot rate minus the exercise rate minus the call premium. So this is for the buyer. But if we were to take a look at the seller, on the other hand, what this means is seller will have to sell euros to the buyer for the price of $1.30 if the buyer chooses to exercise this option in the future. So the situation for the seller is going to be the exact opposite. The seller is going to lose 20 cents per euro if future spot rate happens to be $1.50. But of course, this loss is lessened by the fact that they collected premium of 10 cents per euro, so the total loss for the seller is 10 cents per euro. So essentially the exact opposite of the buyer. If in the future spot rate happens to be exactly the same as the exercise rate of $1.30, the buyer will not exercise this, and the buyer's loss is simply the 10 cents that they pay for the premium, or just make negative C, which means in this case, seller will simply keep the premium of 10 cents. So the buyer will not exercise this option, nothing happens, the option expires, and seller will keep the 10 cents per euro premium. So in other words, it's positive C. Again, if in the future spot rate happens to be lower than the exercise rate of $1.30, buyer will not exercise this option. Instead, they will choose to go and buy euros at the lower price on the spot market. So the payoff is zero, but the loss for the buyer is simply the premium they pay, which is 10 cents per euro again, which means the seller simply keeps the premium of 10 cents per euro. So in other words, C. So again, that's the most they're making. So if you take a look at the maximum possible profit for the seller of call option, as you can see, the best case is if the buyer does not exercise this contract and seller simply keeps the premium. So the most they can make is the premium of 10 cents per euro, because remember that the buyer will exercise this contract only when it's profitable or beneficial for the buyer to do so. So whenever they exercise this contract, seller will have there will be some negative payoff from exercising this contract. So the best case scenario for the seller is simply keeping the premium, so the most they will make is C. But how about maximum possible loss? Well, there is, as we said before, in the case of call option buyer, there is no limit. There's no upper limit to how high future spot rate can go. So what that means is there's no upper limit to how much money the buyer can make, which also means there's no upper limit to how much money the seller can lose. So there's unlimited potential loss for the seller. So how about break-even price or rate? At what future spot rate will the seller not make money or not lose money? In other words, the amount of money they lose from exercising this contract will be exactly the same as the premium they collect. So if we were to solve for that future spot rate, we see that at the future spot rate of $1.40 per euro, either side makes money or loses money. So what that means is when the future spot rate is $1.40, the buyer will exercise this contract, and the loss from exercising will be 10 cents per euro, because buyer is buying euros from the seller at the price of $1.30, but spot rate actually happens to be $1.40. So seller is losing 10 cents, but the seller actually collected 10 cents for call premium up front, so they cancel each other out. So call seller is not making any money or losing money. The same thing for buyer. Call buyer is not making money or not losing money. So at the future spot rate of $1.40, call seller breaks even. So if we were to take a look at the payoff profile of the call seller on the figure, this is what it looks like. This is our break-even point of $1.40. So for all future spot rates higher than $1.40, call seller loses money. Starting from, for all future spot rates that is below $1.30, the buyer will not exercise the contract and just let it expire, which means the seller gets to keep the premium of 10 cents. So this is the most money they'll make, and that is for all future spot rates lower than $1.30. But for all spot rate higher than $1.40, they start losing money. So this is what the payoff profile of call seller looks like.